So part two of this concept of breath holding to become familiar with what it's like to be uncomfortable, to be in pain, and to not quit. And that's a different thing than blocking pain. So either one will get you through, I guess, right? But they're two different approaches, and some and first and sec. First of all, I would like to say that I believe that the second method, by accepting the uncomfortable situation and accepting that you're going to endure it and embracing it, is far superior, and it'll last longer, and it will go farther, and it's more powerful. But that's not to say that learning how to block some pain isn't also a good thing to do. It helps you. It's another discipline, right? It's a good thing too. But this method of holding your breath and becoming uncomfortable and saying to yourself, this is okay to be uncomfortable. I don't always have to be comfortable. I don't always have to seek pleasure. And I don't always have to avoid pain. I can be in pain and not quit. I can be uncomfortable and stay with it, stay the course. Distance runners know this. They talk about it differently, but they're in the same ballpark. You know, going another mile when things are just shutting down and hurting. They do that all the time. You know, they're very uncomfortable, and they don't let it change their performance. And I've read a lot of books and seen a lot of documentaries on snipers, and they have to lay in the same position in Overwatch for sometimes days, and they can't move because they don't want to be spotted. And so they they soil themselves. They don't eat anything. Usually they have some way of getting some drinks. They have those camelbacks, and they don't dehydrate. But in the old days, I mean, a lot of them just dehydrated and stayed really uncomfortable. If you've ever starved and dehydrated, you know that dehydration is far more painful than starving. But in any case, there's groups of people who are good at this, and they've been around for a long time, so they have lessons to teach us. And one of the easiest ways to get into this is this breath holding technique. And I guess I jumped ahead a second there. I also wanted to mention that a lot of religions have, self-mortifying uh, practices like fasting, like whipping yourself with a flail. You know, you've seen people do that, and there's a reason they do that that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. They have spiritual reasons for doing it, but they become okay with being uncomfortable. For them, there's some religious value in it. Um, so they have an advantage that way. We just want to get physically and mentally tougher. They want to get spiritually tougher, so they have a higher motivation maybe. But still, they know how to do things like that. They sit in yoga positions for hours and hours, maybe days as well, like the snipers. And so this has been around with a lot of people for a long time, and a lot of people know how to do it and are good at it. And I think we can learn a lot from them. So, taking a page out of their book, uh, I was looking into this ACT therapy, acceptance, commitment therapy, but there's action in there too. So they should probably call it ACAT, but they don't. Anyway, and I came across this woman who taught this technique of breath holding to become familiar with what it's like to be uncomfortable and not let it get the better of you. And so all she says to do is time yourself, maybe two trials, where you just hold your breath as long as you can, get a sweep hand, and see how long you can make it. Make a note of it. And then change your goal, change your perspective. Now it's not to go as long as you can anymore. We're going to keep time of it. You're going to use the stopwatch, but it's not a competition to better yourself and go longer. The the world record's like 8 or 9 minutes. Normal's like 1 to 2 minutes. But the goal here is to watch yourself from within. Begin to hold your breath and start timing yourself. As as the CO2 builds up, it's going to want to drive for an inhalation. It's really driving for an exhalation. It wants to get rid of that CO2 buildup. People think we want oxygen. There's still plenty of oxygen left. When you hold your breath, the drive to take a next breath is to blow off the CO2. But either way, you want to breathe. And that becomes more and more intense. And it's uncomfortable, bordering on painful. The longer you go, of course, the more intense that becomes. So your job isn't to last longer. Your job is to pay attention to what's going on. Feel the uncomfortable state build. Pay attention to it. Watch it. Observe it. But also, hand in hand with that, observe what you're doing to try to keep being uncomfortable and not quitting. There's the whole deal right there. The deal is the observations you make about yourself and what that teaches you about how you deal with pain and discomfort and how you deal with persisting when the drive to stop or quit becomes almost overwhelming. And you make this commitment to not be competitive, to not go for a bunch of time, but to go for a bunch of awareness of yourself, to go for the learning about what it's like to be uncomfortable. Nietzsche says if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. So you have that sort of motivation. But you learn about how you can deal with being uncomfortable and not run from it and not be afraid of it and to sit with it. Just sit there being uncomfortable longer and longer and longer. And you will. You will. If you take that attitude, you probably will go longer and longer if you take the competitive attitude, because if you're listening to me, you probably came about my stuff through some sort of competitive, venue. That's where I came from with all this too. But we want to reapply all this strength and knowledge about ourselves to the competitive venue anyway, right? So, but there's lots of applications for this. There's not a lot of applications for being a very good breath holder. But there's plenty of applications for being someone who knows what it takes to be uncomfortable and not quit. I mean, if you have to go to your in-laws and things aren't great there and you got to go for a Christmas dinner or something and it's going to be tough and you're going to be uncomfortable. If you know some things about yourself just from this breath holding exercise, there's lots of other things like marathon running and kneeling on the floor and all kinds of things that you can learn this from. But this is a super easy one and super safe. And you're not doing another thing. You're not running down the road and trying to pay attention to how things are getting more and more uncomfortable and how you're dealing with it. You're just sitting still. So that lets you really focus on the process of building your abilities in dealing with being uncomfortable and saying, no, I won't quit. I'm going to keep going a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. That's the value of this. And that's applicable all over your life, because there's lots of places in your life that are probably not so comfortable. Life is pretty hard. It's brutish and short, hard, brutish and short, and Hobbesian. It's Hobbesian, and so you can use this information that you garner about yourself by doing this practice of just holding your breath, and you can use it in the gym. In a long set of leg presses where it starts to burn and you want to quit and you're tired, but you're not really done. It's not killing you. You're not breaking. You just need to go a little further. Now, again, I've said that in those cases you need an awareness of, what is too much. But we're usually never, ever, most of us don't train or exercise or do anything that's near our limit. Um, it's fun to get there, but it's also a risk. So, but for normal stuff, this is great because we get uncomfortable way before our limit, way before things are going to break. We're uncomfortable, and most people quit. I have a lot. I still do. I still quit way too early, but not as much as I used to when I was younger, and usually for different reasons. I don't have um, I don't have the kind of aspirations I used to. So it's okay for me to quit, but it may not be for you. You may be young, and even if you're not young, you still may have aspirations that require a lot of being uncomfortable from you. And so this is valuable. So to recap, this is a simple, simple operation. You sit with a stopwatch. You get some baseline times of how you hold your breath as long as you think you can make it. And you write that down. And then you change your relationship to the pain, to the discomfort. Instead of having any fear about it, or you become curious. You ask yourself, I wonder if I can go another second. I wonder if I can do another rep. I wonder if I can go another 10 feet or to another driveway, running or swimming or biking or anything. You keep wondering. You substitute fear. You kick the fear out with curiosity. You kick the competition out with information garnering and observation. You want to learn. It's not a competition, it's an opportunity to learn something about how you deal with these things. And as your breath, as the time goes by and you want to breathe and you want to breathe and that discomfort goes up and up and up, think about how you're dealing with it. You'll deal with it in your mind different ways that I do. What you don't want to do is block it. You want to feel it. You want to be uncomfortable and let yourself beat that, overcome that, outlast that. Have victory over it in a different way than you would normally by blocking it. And the dividends are much greater here too. I understand the toughness of blocking out pain and the dividends you get from that in self-esteem and stuff. I've held my hand over a candle and let it burn my hand, like G. Gordon Liddy did. I read that in his book, and he did that to make himself tough. And so, as a kid, I did that too. That's totally different. That's damaging, by the way. That's totally different than what this is. That's a denial of pain. This is an acceptance of pain. But it also is an acceptance that, hey, this pain is not bigger than me. I'm bigger than this pain. I'm better than this pain. I'm more than this pain. This pain is not enough to stop me from doing what I choose to do. And that's a totally different reward. That's a totally different sense of self-esteem. And pride, potentially. But it's not about those things, really. It's really just about learning how you do it. How do you go longer? What do you personally do here and here to be uncomfortable and not pull away? Holding your hand over a candle flame is not it's the same sort of thing, but it doesn't teach the same lesson at all, because you're not accepting it when you do that. But this you accept. You just hold your breath, and it can't hurt you. And if you happen to pass out, you will automatically take another breath, so you'll be fine. So you can do this by yourself. But give this some thought, and then at least try it a couple times and see what you can learn. It can become a practice, and it can become a practice that develops into more aggressive practices, might we say. Um, there are other ways to get at this information. There are meditative techniques to deal with pain. There's all kinds of ways to deal with pain. There's discipline ways. There's mental blocking ways, and you can put yourself into a trance. Those are good tools to have too. But usually, most athletes have one tool, and that's I'm going to block it. I refuse to feel it, and that's a good tool. But this is a different tool, and there's tons more applications for this tool than just blocking the world out. Um, so I I advise that you try it. I advise that you persist in it for a while and see what you can learn. And then you can invent your own ways to go further. You can maybe go distance running. You can maybe hold your breath underwater. That's what people do. That's where the world records are set. So you have something to learn from this, no matter where you are. And even if you already were aware of this, maybe you are a distance runner. Maybe you know a lot about this already. Maybe you're a triathlete. Maybe you know. So that's okay. But this is a simplified down one thing. You're just sitting still, paying attention to what goes on inside. As the discomfort rises, so must your ability to deal with it. In register. And that's super valuable. Even if you stop doing it for a while, you'll remember what you learned. So get on that pronto. You can do it in the next half hour and learn a lot. In 30 minutes from now, from the time you stop watching me, you could know a lot more about yourself and how to push yourself and how to deal with and how to cope with things that are uncomfortable. So I wish you well. Thanks for listening.